Chapter 13. Mireu and Yeouiju he desires. An emoji could become a true dragon, or Yong, or Mireu, if it caught the Yeouiju, which had fallen from heaven. Wikipedia, March 26th, 2024. Minsuk and Tae-sul were in no way accustomed to the time differential between their world and the one of madness, where they stood on either side of a portal to the real world holding assault rifles, but quite briefly. There were a team of 6 men and 3 cats. 2 of the men were calm operatives, recently recruited from South Korea. One was Pak Sun-young, at one exit from the strange place, the other with Ricky in the back of the truck. From what Minsuk and Tae-sul learned of the new calm procedures regarding defector transport, there must be at least 2 people officially on the real-world portal. One for the cat, the other for defense, both armed ideally. Minsuk and Tae-sul were at the second real-world exit with a cat, the third feline of the engagement. Their shift point was the second stage of return through the non-world, too. There wasn't a direct portal in and out of North Korea from South Korea that anyone at Calm knew, so the route required multiple jumps and therefore multiple cats, as well as people, to wait along the way. People that had to know God, as Ricky put it, or the demons would come. Sometimes he called them aliens, too. He didn't seem confused when he used the words. They seemed like synonyms to him. This did not sit well with Minsuk or Tae-sul, but their beliefs were sincere, their curiosity healthy, and their sense of adventure strong. Any good band is like that. So they learned what they had to, and even got excited about it. Sure, it was confusing, but they understood the task given. Minsuk and Tae-sul were to open the portal home and wait. What they didn't realize was how fast it was all going to go down. An instant in that world was minutes in the real world, so they were extensively briefed, dropped off the back of the truck en route to the job, and barely managed to cajole their cat into reopening the portal home when the truck came out where it just was, covered in bullet holes, featuring its full retinue of Ricky, the pastor, the 2 men from Calm and combat fatigues, and 2 other cats. "Jump into bed, you turtles!" yelled Ricky, and the boys did, hearing foul, time-distorted screams behind and the sound of gunfire. When they got through, Tae-sul pinched the cat how they told him and dropped it. His eyes never left the portal as the animal let go its lunch on the metal of the truck bed. He was in time to see a man in North Korean military uniform screaming as a fount of blood exploded where the bottom half of his leg used to be, while in the foreground a nearer soldier managed to get one shot off from his AK, a bullet spiraling languidly ahead of a wreath of flame, beelining it for Tae-sul's forehead, slow and fast as time. With a characteristic thrum, the portal spun shut. Park Sun-young was the first out the truck, followed by rotund Cletus, who hopped out, landed on his face like a pug, and waddled off sideways. None could open a portal as big as Cletus, though his brethren had managed to initiate rifts large enough for the truck, anyway. Their best was about a third what Cletus could do. It also apparently had to do with where a particular shift point was. Some could only get so big. Neither Minsuk nor Tae-sul fully understood and had many questions. "What happened, Pastor?" Minsuk asked, scratching an armpit, then vaulting over the bed of the truck and landing in the parking lot. "I don't know," he said. "We got through the relay and we got ambushed by reality. Take this cat and don't lose the other one. Should be 3 with fatty Cletus running off there." He shoved a black cat into Minsuk's arms. Ricky said, "We got to get to Yakutsk. We'll need Cletus for the big portals. First, though," and he had his phone out. He waited a moment for the person he called to pick up, then said, "Ethan, have you ever been able to hack your way into a satellite?" He waited a moment, then responded to a further question. "No, I need eyes south of Pyongyang. We need to be seeing it." "Yes, I've got the coordinates." All right. Well, I know it's dark, but what about radar the microwave cameras?" Ricky stopped. Well, if you can't get into military encryption, it's like, oh, good. I didn't know there was another option. I'll call you back from the office. In the morning sun, Choi walked along thick tracts in mud and grass south of Pyongyang, as dozens of others with the insignia of Bureau 13 searched like mad for any sign of the cube or its thieves. Choi followed the tracks of the truck from where they appeared out of nowhere, where they got stuck in a slough, and where they pushed through out of muck into drier grasses. There were at least 2 people helping push the truck, meaning a minimum of 3 when the driver was accounted for. But the footprints in mud were larger than a woman's in all cases, meaning there had to be at least 4 persons involved. It was hard to tell, because the mud returned over the spot where the vehicle was stuck. They found a floor mat, but it didn't have any brand markings. Certainly the truck was South Korean. Choi saw it himself, but it would have been good to have undeniable evidence. The thieves were wise enough to remove license plates and brand indicators prior to their journey, so Bureau 13 had nothing to go on from surveillance footage. If the regime made a stink to the South Korean government, they could plausibly claim the terrorist attack was from locals that somehow acquired a truck of South Korean manufacture. It was out there, but what Choi had seen was much less believable even than that, and they couldn't use their footage to make their case. Right now, the existence of some kind of portal tech was clearly a state secret. So they had to find something. Outside the dismembered leg of a soldier, they hadn't turned up much. Choi went over where the tracks began, and they disappeared again and again, finally noticing a point near the end of the tracks where there was an odd disturbance in the underbrush. Looking closer, he saw bits of mud trailing away from the ruts left by the tires stuck on the heads of grass. Following this, he was rewarded with footprints in a muddy patch between fronded hillocks, those of, it had to be the girl, and one of the terrorists who attacked Kyumsusan Palace of the Sun and stole the religious gift of the dynasty. Who missed this? Choi yelled out. A few men looked up and came his way. Choi said, Spread out! See where these go! The tracks led to the river and stopped. Secure! Choi growled and turned. This would mean a manhunt. They were most likely headed south. Choi made a few calls, then drove back to headquarters in the basement of Government Complex No. 1, though his particular office was a hidden area of the basement requiring special access. It wasn't on any official schematic, and its entry was not known to many. The hallways under that building were labyrinthine. He himself was expecting a phone call, and it came, as he knew it would, at precisely 1 minute after 11 in the morning, the day after the attack. I understood you have been having patriotic... I understand you have been having patriotic fireworks displays, Kreen Kolya began without any greeting. Our people are most passionate, Choi returned. But so very odd these displays. One big boom, and then all the little firecrackers from your rifles beneath where was the boom. I have never seen any fireworks quite like this. We have satellites too. I could describe you smoking a cigarette. But I don't think you could describe what I'm calling about now, could you, Choi? How would you know anything about that, I wonder? My intuition, it is very good. Both men laughed without any sort of mirth. Choi rejoined, You had better hope your team of idiots can get their prize to you before I find them. You had better be more respectful to your masters, little Korean dog. We may share the occasional treats. Choi smiled under dark glasses. They never left his face, even alone in his office. How good it is that you are so untouchable, he said, and hung up. International operations were going to be a must on this. Choi sat at his desk and ground his teeth together, gripping the bare metal of the old piece of furniture and clenching his neck. Muscles stood out like skin-wrapped cables, and a bellow came out of him that sounded inhuman. He pounded his desk. Then he pounded it again. then 4 more times until his own blood stained it and there were several dents. "You're wasting that energy," said a mellow voice abruptly. Choi was shocked despite himself. He wanted to turn but couldn't, even though he knew what he would see. It was Mireu. Standing at the corner of his vision, a visual cacophony of clashing hues, clothed in deathly white, with a multicolored beard to his waist and eyes like a cat's. Mireu. Choi perspired, gritting through paralysis like that of nightmare sleep, where things of dark assault the mind and the body is helpless to flee. "We have allies out of the country." "Get back, my Yeouiju, Choi." It's not an orb, great Mireu, as the traditional Yeouiju, but it's a cube." Mireu was coming toward him from the corner of his eye, so bright the sunglasses did nothing to hide him grinning like he did. The voice was always so calm, but it was so heavy. "Choi, get back, my Yeouiju," he repeated. The room felt as though it became very bright, and then the lights were back to normal, and Choi turned as fast as he could to the corner where Mireu had been. But it was empty as it ever was. The fear stayed, though, making him sweat and tremble. Whenever he saw Mireu, he also knew paralysis. The last image superimposed on Choi's mind was of a grinning, hungry dragon with a great red mouth to complement its great red mane and eyes of madness. The prospect of being lunch was not one he liked. "I'll get it back, Mireu. I'll get it back." Choi stood and regarded portraits of the dear leader above the door to his subterranean office. Before he had a chance to form another thought, the phone rang. He picked up, and a Bureau 13 officer on the other end said, "Sir, the portal has reopened in the Palace of the Sun." Insu waited until he saw the great explosion in the sky, then started singing a hymn about marching home in triumphant victory, and the rest got the message. Insu and his own made their way home, or to whatever they called home. They were about half the crowd at Kyum-Susan Palace of the Sun that night. For Insu, the trip back was hard, as he had no time to sleep. His only day off was Sunday, and his work day began at 8 in the morning. He had to get back to the north, and it was a long drive. He had the privilege of a vehicle, owing to his savvy in the black markets. But passing various checkpoints was still a matter of proper bribes. Sneg helped him there, too, by leaving extra cash. Insu felt something painful inside, and couldn't immediately identify it during his work shift the following day, until he remembered that he felt the same thing when his cousin was killed under interrogation at a camp. He hadn't been given the news until later, but he recalled the feeling. Insu went about his day as usual, but in his heart, he prayed for all those who joined in song to stress the regime's security officers and aid Sneg in his quest. He prayed for Malchin. He prayed for all Koreans, and, as with so many shifts before, he was done with the day's duties before he realized it, and this time made his way home to his apartment in the adjacent community, rather than to the cottage with contraband. It wasn't until then that he learned of Malchin from one of the ladies always about the common area of the building. Insu felt great grief, but in that world did not have the luxury of showing it. Even more disturbing, though, was his conviction this would be the beginning of a chain reaction. He might have been 76, but Insu was seriously thinking about crossing that border. How did Sneg do it? One of the loud beasts with the rolling legs and eyes like suns somehow made a huge portal, growling through it, and came screaming at White Paw and Hamari. White Paw's feline self-preservation took over, and he took off. The gunfire of the men in brown shook him with each echoing report, nearly scrambling his kitty brain. But White Paw was small, dark, fast, and not of chief concern to anyone but Himari, who was just then tumbling into flowers, frozen in screams. He could sometimes hear her calling out to him over the commotion, but natural feline independence allowed White Paw the luxury of total disregard. There was precious little cover in the open space around the great leader. White Paw ran to the darkest shadow in the furthest corner from the violence, where he quickly expurgated. There were a number of pillars bracketing arches far out from the center of the wide room, and White Paw crouched in shadow behind one of these, watching closely as the growling creature attacked and threw machines everywhere, even into the crystal table, then launched a brown-shirted man the other direction into darkness. Suddenly, a man White Paw had never seen before picked up Himari, threw her into the empty shell at the back of the beast, and jumped in himself. They barely missed getting hit by the thunder barkers of the brown shirts. The truck quickly sped where it had come, toward the great doors giving entry to this portion of the mausoleum. Abruptly, the split came, and another window, dozens of times larger than anything White Paw ever managed, opened. He had seen portals that big only one time before. His kitty brain should have remembered a litter mate, a literal feline brother, but cats are cats. As the truck went into it, White Paw could see a forest through the huge window, and so could all the soldiers in the room, who were led by the one with black sunglasses, an evil smile, and angry speech. Certainly, White Paw's grasp of human language, Korean, Japanese, or otherwise, was minimal. Even so, here is what he heard. "What are you doing? Get after him! Get after them all!" The troops were terrified. The evil person in shades shot one of them in the head, the second man to shuck a mortal coil in such a way in that room in that day. The other soldiers took note, and 8 or 9 jumped into the roiling portal, coming right behind the truck. Almost immediately as the last went through, the portal whirled shut loud, causing the evil man to recoil. He looked back and forth at the empty, unblemished doors leading out of the great leader's tomb, and he threw out his arms, and he screamed at the sky, and then burst through those doors, walking, then running another direction, shouting more things, and soon being followed by other boots. Not long after, a cleanup crew came and very carefully removed the broken glass around the great leader. It hadn't totally shattered. The portion covering his face was intact. Only the other end was broken in. Shards were removed, and a general cleanup effort began, one which White Paw was very careful to watch from all angles, staying as hidden as he could. Then there were a number of exclamations, and the task was abandoned. In about 30 minutes, everything in the mausoleum was everything was silent in the mausoleum. White Paw carefully crept to the external door from the chamber of the great leader. But then he saw a very wide open space that was dark and full of uncertain smells. He scrambled back to the center of the room and ultimately hid in a voided area inside a big machine with a circle around it. One White Paw couldn't have known used to be an MRI. It was too big to cart out immediately, so cones were set up in the area, either divested of broken equipment or set back as it was. The MRI was fundamentally damaged by the truck, but there was still space for a cat. White Paw spent a solid day inside, waiting. Himari never returned. He tried to tell her this was not a portal she should go through, for White Paw had been through many holes that were not safe. Some came out in the air and had a long drop. Some came out underwater. Some windows came out in the middle of cities. But some came out under the beds of little autistic Japanese ladies who would feed him beef jerky. This particular window into North Korea was not one White Paw knew. It was not a portal he was used to. His feline senses did not trust it. But his gastrointestinal desire trumped those senses when the jerky came out. This desire now prompted him. The hunger came so fast in the dangerous place. Things were dead silent a very long time. White Paw gingerly crept from his dark alcove of safe harbor. He looked around, left, right, up, down. He marked the defunct MRI as his own for future use, and gave the premises a hard sniff. There weren't any people near. The air was astonishingly clean in this place. The glass was shattered at the far end of the great dictator. Whitepaw looked at the damage and chattered after the manner of cats, unsure how to get up so he could open the portal. He settled with standing at the side of the big rectangular protective covering, paws on the glass. He looked straight up and purred. It took a minute, but the window opened. Whitepaw jumped high and barely managed to scramble over the glass at the edge of the opening, entering the safe place. The interval between Whitepaw's jump and his expurgation closing the portal was about a minute this time, and for good reason. However, in the world of men, this was a 12-hour window. In that time, Choi was notified the portal had reopened, and so he mustered all of Bureau 13, closed off the palace again, reactivated all adjacent equipment that was not damaged beyond repair, and hand-selected 3 of the best troops of North Korea's army. His favorite among them was Durai. Durai helped infiltrate Christian sects in North Korea. So many agents were sent to do so. But they were generally converted, and the result was they had to be exiled to hard labor. It was a shame. Serious intelligence and presence of mind were needed to successfully infiltrate those underground churches. Durai managed it, and did so well enough he was promoted accordingly. The other 2 troops were generally strong, bright, efficient, passionate, and committed, but Durai outshone them. He always sang regime hymns, even when walking by himself. The most important feature of each man, though, was this. Skills aside, they were expendable. They were not dark of eye like Choi. He lost 12 men over the last 24 hours, liquidating one himself in a show of excess. This was too much. Each was a substantial investment, even if they had yet to wear the darkened glasses. Bureau 13 only boasted about 200 personnel, now 188. Those with eyes like Choi were special indeed. Of the remaining 188, only about 40 were as he. So he needed to outsource. While the troops arrived and were outfitted for their investigation through the portal, Choi reviewed surveillance footage. A cat ran away just as the portal opened the first time. How had it come into the palace? He understood the truck. It came through another portal, a huge one. Well, so came the cat. That only made sense. No cat would get through the antechambers of the facility's entry. The cat hid while the corpse of Malchin the traitor was cleaned, as was the broken glass around the feet of the great leader, and machines damaged by the South Korean truck that invaded with terrorists. When they were called away for other emergency duties, the cat waited, then found his way to the MRI, too big to move during initial cleaning. The cat hid inside. He stayed there a while, then exited, urinated on the machine, and jumped into a portal. Now the animal could be seen crouched on a grassy plain with a view on a far horizon in pre-dawn twilight. Something reflective was just out of sight to the left of the portal's window and couldn't be observed. There was also a very large tube of some variety. It had silver coloration and seemed to invite purple and green after images somehow, as though this is what light bounced from its insides. There was also a very large tube of some variety. It had silver coloration and seemed to invite purple and green after images somehow, as though this is what light bouncing from its outsides looked like. For some reason, no camera aimed at this window into another world formed clear pictures. They were shaky and staticky. So Choi acquired 12 clear-eyed Bureau 13 members to write down every second of what happened through that window, interrogation style, and to keep writing in real time continuously so that multiple perspectives could capture what was shown in every respect, even if the cameras couldn't. Several sketch artists were there as well. There was also a very large man in the window of the portal where the cat now crouched in grass, slowly moving to the side, eyes wide on the cylinder beyond. This man was hairy, and Choi couldn't tell if he were Caucasian or Middle Eastern. He was pale, but had features of a man from either the desert or India. Choi wasn't sure. He wore a massive thick beard, smart gray eyes, long gray-streaked hair, and a coat that looked as though it were very recently a bear. He held a long saber and screamed at the silver tube while the cat crouched ever lower, preparing to hiss. Seeing the circumstances, the special soldiers did their best to maintain discipline. Bureau 13 in North Korea was utterly clandestine, even by regime standards, so working with them to begin with made many soldiers afraid. Seeing the actual madness the Bureau could sometimes encounter, this was another thing. Choi himself gave them a briefing, as time was short. He said, "This window you see into this place, to produce it, capitalist American bastards have confederated with Japanese bastards, and probably bastards among our deceived brothers in the South. They have confederated to impugn our fatherland. But this window will close any second. If any part of your body is not all the way through, it will be sliced cleanly off. You may survive, you may not. We've lost a dozen men. Your mission is simple. Get the cat, get the man, bring them here. Understood?" The men nodded, checked firearms, and climbed the mobile staircase, the same used to board airplanes, into the portal. What Choi and surrounding Bureau 13 personnel saw was not encouraging. As soon as the men stepped through, two of them immediately began to levitate, and though in slow motion, they were being drawn fast enough it was visible in the world without, indicating substantial speed indeed. They were being sucked in an indigo beam of light toward the tube, while the third man was raising his weapon with infinite slowness. That was Jurai. The cat looked back with the speed of cats, appearing to slowly sweep his feline gaze into the room of the great leader. His mouth opened and his eyes squeezed shut, and the portal slowly spiraled in time to the swirling, voided contents of the cat's stomach until it closed percussively. Choi walked up the stairs and looked where the window just was, as those writing every detail down and those monitoring surveillance equipment looked to one another. A low murmur arose. "Please accept this sacrifice," was his thought. Being black of eye meant knowing more than the average regime appointee. "Sir, the trackers are dead," said one of the men. "All three?" Choi asked. "Yes, sir." He nodded, clasped his hands behind his back, descended the stairs, and quickly left the room. Whitepaw froze when he saw the great tube in the sky, eyes widening, feline soul entirely shaken. Rohan Hanuman bellowed at the tube, waving his saber. Whitepaw crouched, feeling nauseous as normal after a jump, but ready to run. Suddenly, 3 Korean men came through the window. Immediately as the men came through, 2 of them were fixed with an indigo beam and drawn swiftly toward the great silver tube, shrieking in terror, firing impotent rounds at the massive thing, but unable to have any impact. Whitepaw let the contents of his stomach go, and he ran. The third man shouted and fired as well, screaming to tears for his lost brothers. He turned to the hairy one and cried, "Is this your ship? Tell them to stop!" The hairy one looked sadly at the soldier, then pulled out a canteen like a bugle made of an animal's horn. He popped something off the small end, drank from it, then motioned for the young man to do the same. The young man from North Korea didn't do anything for a moment, looking around, looking behind, seeing the window or portal or whatever it was had closed, looking ahead and seeing his brethren sucked toward the tube, then to his side, where was the man with the horn. He brought his weapon to bear, aiming squarely at the man's face. "Tell them to stop or I'll blow your head!" Suddenly the young soldier was on the ground, and there was a canteen in the shape of a horn being shoved into his mouth. The gun had been violently snatched away. He was too close when he raised it. Sweet water came out of the canteen. He spit as much of it out as he could, scrambling, pulling free, standing, yanking a knife from his belt. But, and this is the odd thing, he heard suddenly words he did not know, but for some reason his mind understood. The big man was saying, "You need the water to understand. I do not intend harm. I cannot stop this. Your brothers do not know the Timeless One. You know the timeless one, however, so you have not been taken. What is your name?" The young soldier looked around madly, then said, "You're not speaking Korean. How do I understand you?" "The water." "What is your name?" "I am Durai." The hairy man nodded. "I am Rohan Hanuman, the stoic, would-be Kingslayer, the, the stoic, would-be Kingslayer, the spicer, and the sly." "Your name is very appropriate, for it means two. I perceive by your costume and that of your fellows that you serve another power that fashions itself as the timeless one. I perceive that you do not believe this, but you love your people, and so you serve not that which pretends to be the timeless one, but the timeless one who has made all men. So you are too, Durai. You are a man of your people, and a soldier in the kingdom of the timeless one himself." What?" There was another low noise, and abruptly the tube began to shrink, retreating until it was a pinpoint on the horizon. Durai followed it, turning back to the one called Rohan. "By timeless one, you mean the forbidden American God, the Christ?" "Yes." "Am I in death that things are as they are, and you know automatically the hope I keep secret from those who chain me to the state?" "You are not in death. Without the timeless one, Christ, as you say, you would have been taken, for you are a man in the age of accountability, and accordingly reason for your decisions, compelled by evil or not, is that which makes you responsible. You were not taken. This means your heart is that of the timeless one." "Well, okay, I understand, but what happens when I return alone? And what happens to them? They're bad, but they're deceived by this force that runs our country, and they are my people and my friends. Can we not find them?" "Unlikely. They have been taken where they will be kept in a nightmare, and their emotions harvested. If it is any consolation, their only injuries will be mental and spiritual. Their bodies will not be significantly harmed." "What do I do?" "You can pray to the timeless one, and there is no need to shroud such prayers, Durai, not here. You can be of a clear mind here." About this time, White Paw ran to Rohan and put paws on his bearskin coat, making a loud meowing noise, galloping back to where the portal had been, looking at it, then coming back to Rohan. "I do not know, little one. I thought you would come back with her." "You speak cat too?" Durai was incredulous. "Of course not, but you can see what the animal wants." "What of the girl who came through with him?" I don't. There's been the idols of my country. The idols of my country have been desecrated. There is a manhunt. They seek a white man and a Japanese woman in the South. I was sent years ago to infiltrate the church in North Korea. I did, successfully, and came to know God, the timeless one, as so many others have. Of course I couldn't give them up, but I could feed the state false information. I did, and made it look real good. And that's how I got promoted where I am. They thought I was helping them stamp out the Christians. But the churches I ran with, I gave them good notice. They always got out in time. So those in the regime sang my praises, and they chose me for what they thought was deep infiltrative skill. So I am now here for this mission, because they have the wrong idea about me. That's all I know. When our group was briefed, we weren't told about the girl or the white man. We were told to get the cat and to get you. Said Rohan. Perhaps then we should both pray. And he sank to his knees, facing a distant conglomeration of mirrored color and brilliance, one that immediately captured Durai's imagination and short-circuited his brain. Durai knelt beside Rohan, but had trouble closing his eyes to match the prayer. Rohan said, "O Timeless One, please have mercy on our brokenness. Thank you for your graciousness, and we know not the way. I perceive events in motion that bear your touch. So then, Timeless One, please guide us. We pray this in the name of He who knew and overcame the death of this world. And if Doyun and Baekhyun can be saved, O great Christ, save them," added Durai. "Oh," punctuated White Paw, and began walking inland, but in a direction which was still generally oriented toward the sparkling mirrored structure far away. The cat seemed to have found a footpath of sorts. Rohan's eyes followed his arrogant tail in astonishment. It was the way. In spite of himself, Rohan trembled. "What do we do now?" Durai asked. Rohan turned slowly to look Durai in the eye. "We followed the cat."